This is the literature research slide for our project. I'll just go ahead and start. Within our project, we are going to be focusing on vocalization of physical behaviors of squirrels and how they communicate with each other and this particular related gene. Um, Using Google Scholar and the MSU Library portal, we wanted to try and find any journal, research paper, article that we would be helpful for our project. I'm sorry. Um, we were able to find one journal and one research paper that we thought had a direct connection to what we were uh, researching and would help us tremendously going down this road with our project. Um, the one journal we found was titled Vocal Behavior of the Squirrel Glider. And within this journal, it actually analyzed the vocalization of the squirrel glider. It pretty much talked about what noises these researchers found the most common within the squirrel glider. And then after determining the noises they'd make, they would then try to connect these noises to a meaning. Why are they making these noises? It goes into great detail, and we thought it'd be very helpful because that's exactly what we want to know with the squirrels around us. Um, the research paper that we found was titled Tail Communication in the Eastern Gray Squirrel. And uh, instead of vocalization with squirrels, this research paper focused on how these Eastern Gray squirrels use their tails to communicate with each other. So again, a direct connection to what we were trying to find for this project. And the methods that they used in both this research paper and the journal I mentioned previously helped us tremendously to build ideas for our project. While researching for our project, we wanted to find any type of evidence or research paper, etc., that would have a type of gene connection to what we were looking at. We were able to find one journal, which was titled Genetics of Honeybee Defense Behavior. Within this journal, it talks about the flight or fight response within honeybees. They found that honeybees do have one, that occurs during an altercation, just as humans. Although this journal focuses on honeybees and not squirrels, we would want to use the research done and instead look at the alarm calls within squirrels while studying the genomic sequence responsible. So we would want to use the methods and ideas within this journal and then apply it to what we're looking for within our own research and our own experiments.
A little bit of background info about the squirrels. So we read papers about the eastern gray squirrel and the squirrel glider and found that their main way to communicate is through their tails and vocalization. Their behavior and communication styles has been documented using drawings, charts, and tables. So in the first paper that we read, the methods that they used were a bird feeder. So they put a bird feeder on the ground, and then the researchers went 2 floors above, and they tried to see how, and they did this because they didn't want their behaviors to affect the squirrels in any way. So they put the bird feeder, and they observed how the aggression between the squirrels, the dominance between the squirrels, and the tail movements between the squirrels. And they did this, and they documented it with a chart and the degrees that the squirrel tails were and the type of behavior that they were doing. The next paper that we read involved vocalizations. So this is when they played different types of squirrel noises, such as like a sound and hissing noises and grunting of the squirrels and many more noises through the playback speaker, and they observed how the squirrels reacted to these noises. So we proposed to study the fox squirrel, the Sciurus niger, using playback sounds and through observational studies as well. Our goals. So we want to see how they physically change when these types of dangerous circumstances and these vocalizations are brought upon them. We also want to know the different types of vocalizations that occur and the corresponding behavior to them. We also want to know how this can compare to humans when they are also present in a similar circumstance. And we also want to see how this can compare to squirrels in different areas, for example, in a place where there's less human activity versus a place where there's more human activity. So we want to do this in 3 phases. So the first phase will be observations, where we observe in 2 different sites where there's a place where there's less human activity and a place where there's more human activity. And we just want to observe and see how the squirrels are in their wild habitat. And we want to observe their alarm calls as well. The second phase would involve experimenting, so doing the playback noises and maybe even a bird feeder to see how they react and how the squirrels interact amongst each other. And then the third phase would be to compare the location. So the location that we're choosing to do that's not where there's not that much human activity within and versus a place where there is a lot of human activity. So we want to complete this in 3 phases. So human and squirrels actually have a lot of similarities, one being the fight or flight response. So we want to compare the DNA of a squirrel and human using squirrel hair and a human hair, along with the anatomy. So here you can see that this is actually the squirrel anatomy, and right here is the human anatomy. So these are both the peripheral nervous system in the squirrel and the human. So we want to see how the DNA can also compare with the anatomy and see what similarities and differences they have. We want to do this through gel electrophoresis. Gel electrophoresis is when you separate DNA molecules to size and you're able to compare human DNA and animal DNA. And they are separated through an electric current and because the shorter molecules move faster and the larger molecules actually stay behind. And so you're able to compare the 2 different types of DNA. The proteins are actually spread by the charge in the agarose, which is the material that is used.
We've proposed to use smartphones to record squirrels and their behavior using the approaches from our article. We're going to be watching how they communicate with their tails and listen to their vocalizations that they make. We will be filming the squirrels for 2 weeks. We will record the squirrels once in the morning and once at night every day. After we film, we will be writing down our observations. We propose to study the squirrels and how they communicate and react to the playback sounds. We will be paying close attention to the different types of vocalizations we hear. To discuss how squirrels act with more human activity, we will be observing the squirrels in suburban areas. Rural areas will be the control for this experiment. The different areas we will be studying the squirrels are in Novi and East Lansing, Michigan. To connect our animal research with humans, we are using studies based on the alarm call vocalizations versus non-alarm call vocalizations. For the animal use approval, we are going to be using the playback calls made by our animal. Therefore, we must ask for permission and fill out the paperwork for working with the Animal Protection Committee. We are not going to be interacting with the squirrels, just observing them from a distance, and are not going to be harming them in any way. I recently emailed the exemption from IACUC practical form to the IACUC, and we are still waiting on the approval.
I'll be focusing on the controls of the experiment. As an experimental control, we will study squirrels in a city where there are more human interaction. In our case, it will be Novi, and compare it to a more rural area where there's less human interaction, which in this case would be East Lansing. This way we can see how humans affect the reactions of the squirrels. We also plan to design the experiment in a way that we have many trials to collect a substantial amount of data.
So there is a genetic basis for our experimentation. As a group, we inquired about squirrel alarm call vocalizations versus non-alarm call vocalizations, which can be connected to the FOXP2 gene. The full genomic sequence of the FOXP2 gene can be found at the hyperlink below in the BLAST server. However, this sequence has been found in bees and not necessarily squirrels yet. In order to identify this gene in squirrels, what we propose is using GNA extrication to isolate the gene, PCR amplification to amplify the gene, and Sanger sequencing techniques in order to properly identify the gene using the BLAST server link below. We do have an evolutionary basis for this hypothesis. With that, we're hypothesizing that since humans have evolved to using vocalizations for a majority of communication, especially in times of intense danger, squirrels and bees have always had a larger pool of predators, thus they must use a combination of vocalizations and physical behaviors in order to properly analyze the situation and alert others. We are focusing in on the vocalization aspect because it's not always very obvious to predators, especially when it comes to a bee.